big news of the morning is the trade tensions are flaring up between the U.S. and China. President Trump is threatening to increase tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods, casting doubt on optimism for a trade deal. Beijing, in the face of all of this, is now weighing whether or not to pull out of the trade meeting that was in place scheduled for this week in the United States. The news is sparking a sell-off. Take a look. Dow 474 points lower on the Dow Industrials. S&P futures down 48, and the Nasdaq futures down 162 points. Now, this all comes on the heels of Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin's trip to Beijing last week. Now, before he went on the trip, he sat down with me and he said that the enforcement mechanism was close to being agreed upon. Watch this. What would be the most ideal situation in this next round of talks?
Well, Maria, I think the good news is we've made a lot of progress. I think we've been talking about this for 2 years, starting with President Trump and President Xi at Mar-a-Lago, talking about a desire to have a rebalanced trading relationship, and that's something President Xi agreed to. Over the last 4 months, Ambassador Lighthizer and a large interagency team has done an extraordinary job. I think we've made more progress than ever before. This is a real agreement. If we get to a completed agreement, it will have real enforcement provisions. There's still some important issues, so we still have more work to do. I think we spent a lot of time. We expect to have the meetings this week. The Vice Premier will come back with his team the following week. I think there's a strong desire from both sides to see if we can wrap this up or move on.
So have you gotten the enforcement mechanism done? Is that agreed upon?
The enforcement mechanism is close to done. So I would say that's one of the areas we've made a lot of progress. It needs a little bit of fine-tuning, but I would say we have a fundamental understanding in that area.
This interview was 1 week ago. Then, after that interview, he left for Beijing. Joining us right now to talk more about that is the former press secretary and President Trump, America First Action senior advisor and spokesperson, Sean Spicer. And back with us here in the studio is the author of The Coming Collapse of China, Gordon Chang. Sean, Gordon, great to see you both. Thank you so much for being here, gentlemen. Gordon, let me kick this off with you. Your reaction to Steven Mnuchin a week ago, something obviously broke down this past week in Beijing.
Yeah, clearly, and I think reality is just hitting both sides. But, you know, there's been a lot of cheerleading on the part of administration officials, and you can sort of understand why. But there's some things that are really obvious, political considerations, especially in Beijing, but also in Washington, pushing the two sides apart. And part of it is the Chinese economy. You have to understand what's going on there because that really affects their motivation right now.
At the same time, Sean Spicer, you've seen the president do dealings before, and he likes to make threats. Is this a threat that the president is trying to effect change, get the Chinese to the table to agree to what the U.S. wants?
Of course it is. Absolutely. I mean, but nothing is closed with the Chinese until it's actually closed. And then you've got to do what Secretary Mnuchin was talking about in terms of the enforcement mechanism. So the devil's going to be in the detail. But for decades, China has been subsidizing its industries. It's been engaging in predatory trade practices, especially with respect to intellectual property and the illegitimate transfer of wealth that has gone on from our human capital to them. So for the president to stand up to them and to make it very clear that we're going to fight, continue to fight, is what I think is important. Too often you've seen these, patty cake type meetings where everybody walks out with agreements about long-term goals and strategies. The president understands that you've got to stop talking, you got to start doing. And so I think being tough right now is what's needed, because until the Chinese come here and figure out how to close that gap, then we don't have a deal.
Sean, Mitch Rochelle, and Gordon, you could potentially weigh on this too. The NAFTA 2.0 USMCA still hasn't been ratified by the House. So obviously China knows that there's a political risk here, that even if a deal is done, it couldn't be ratified. Are they slow playing, recognizing that there's a sort of political fallout? They don't want to give the win to the Democrats, don't want to give the win to the president. So to you, Sean, is that likely in the mix here in the negotiations, that China just knows that there's a potential win for the president that the House will never let happen?
No, I think because there's a difference in terms of what needs to be ratified. So you can make a trade deal that's outside of or on the periphery as opposed to USMCA, which needs to go through Congress. And that's separate. But I mean, that may have some type of calculus in their thinking, but I think Gordon's right in terms of, I think the Chinese are more concerned with their own economy than they are about our political situation. But both sides right now, as they get close, the political realities creep in terms of what it means for their own constituencies. And how this will be played is what matters. China obviously plays the long game in all these kind of talks. They're not thinking about the next election because they don't have to. And so I think they're thinking of how will this play with their people and how will it affect their economy. And the same thing with us. You've got a lot on the line when it comes to what the president is going to get. With respect to China, though, domestically, if the president got them to bend on whether it was intellectual property or non-tariff and tariff barriers, I think our Congress, regardless of party, would have to applaud the president and approve anything he did. That's a little bit different than Mexico, where we've got the Democrats are always going to have labor and environmental issues that suddenly creep up at the last minute to get a deal over the line.
Sean, it's Dagan McDowell, but this is part of President Trump's communications strategy, which, again, you know very well, where he will say something very maybe outrageous, tweet something harsh, but the reality on the ground is a little bit different than the verbiage coming out of the president or the language that he uses. And I point to this on the tariff issue and the fight with China, that the U.S. trade representative might have to give U.S. industry a pretty decent notice on any change in tariffs. So this wouldn't be something that would happen instantaneously, 10% to 25% on $200 billion in goods on Friday. And then also they want to move slowly because they do fear the people who negotiate these trade deals of a legal challenge to what happens.
Well, yeah, but I think that the bigger issue goes back to Maria's first question, which is if you are the Chinese and you're negotiating with this president, unlike previous administrations, regardless of the mechanism and the timing that it'll take to implement it, you know that he means business. That's not what they faced in the past. And I think whether or not it takes 30 or 60 or 90 days to implement what he ultimately decides, if he says we're going to raise the tariff rate up to 25%, you know he's not kidding. Right? Yeah. So you may have more time. And I think that's the difference in the negotiating style that brings these guys to the table and could potentially make the difference in whether or not we close the deal or don't.